Hi, I'm Cheryl Belson, and I'm going to teach you today how to add a lining pattern piece to a jacket that does not have one. It's really a lot easier than it sounds, and I'm going to show you in just a few easy steps. This is the front piece of this particular jacket. It looks a little strange up here perhaps because it's a wraparound collar, but you got the arm side here, and this is the shoulder seam, and then this is going to be the collar that wraps around. This is the facing that will go on this part of the jacket or at the front, and then this is the front hem facing. So what we have to do to create the lining is to remove the space that will already be occupied by these facings. So how do we do that? I'm going to take this front facing and I'm just going to put it right on top of the facing, the jacket pattern piece. Let's straighten this up. It's nice and straight and aligned. All right, so now this is completely aligned on top of the jacket piece. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to draw a line that mirrors where this is on my front pattern piece. I'm just going to come right along like this. All the way until I get to the end. All right, now I'm going to take this facing piece off because I need to now go back and add a seam allowance so that when I attach the lining to the front facing, I'll have something to stitch it to. All right, let's put that back over here. So I'm going to need a 5/8 or 1/2 inch, whatever seam allowance you're using. In this particular pattern, the instructions are to finish the edge of this by turning under the edges. So it's going to take up a 1/2 inch of this front facing, the same amount I would be taking up for a seam allowance in this particular pattern. So I need to take my ruler and I just need to add another 1/2 inch of seam allowance to this side. So this is going to be lining. This is where the facing is going to come in. So I need this lining to have that seam allowance over here. So I'm just going to take my ruler. All the way to the bottom. So this is now my lining piece to this line. So this is where we drew where the facing will be, plus the seam allowance. So you would use this piece to cut the lining. And in this case, it would come straight across here and down like this, just because it's got this wraparound collar. Okay? So now we've taken account of this facing, but we also on this pattern have a front hem facing. So we're going to do the exact same thing. Here you go. So I've added the seam allowance so that whenever I stitch the lining to the front hem facing, I've got something to stitch it to. So here's our facing line. Give ourselves an extra seam allowance. So your lining will now come down and it will be cut over to this shape right here. Hope this helps you get an idea of how this works and that you can give it a try. I'm ready to bag this lining. And so I want to show you what I've done to attach it. You'll see I've got the edges of this jacket all sewn together. Got the lining and the outer fabric stitched all the way around from the top of the jacket down the side lapel or front side of the jacket, all the way across the bottom of the jacket. This is a facing. You don't have to have a facing. I like having the facing, but you're gonna close this up all the way around. You're not gonna leave any opening all the way around. On this lining, on one sleeve, you will have left an opening. Now I left this opening pretty big because I wanted it to be really easy to turn, but this is just on one of the sleeves of the lining, okay? Then you're going to take the end of that sleeve, you're gonna have the end of the outer and the end of the lining fabric. You're gonna have the outer part wrong side out, and you're going to have your lining wrong side out at this point. And you're doing this after you have sewn all the way around the outside. You take the outer fabric, you fold that up just a little bit so that you expose the right side and can put this lining around the edge of it. I know it's a little harder for me to show you because I have already sewn it together, but let me pull it back out again so you can hopefully get the idea. Here is your outer fabric right here. And I just took it, I flipped up kind of like a little cuff. And then I shoved it inside the lining. So that gives me right sides together between the lining fabric and the outer fabric. You want to make sure you haven't twisted either one, and you can see here, these are not twisted, they're straight. I made sure that this underarm seam was straight and that the underarm seam of the lining was straight, and that was kind of my guide. You're gonna stitch, it's a little fiddly, but you're gonna stitch all the way around this. So as you can see, this is all the way around the outer. So now you've completely stitched the bottom edge of both sleeves, and you've completely stitched the entire outer portion of the jacket. So you take this hole that you left in one sleeve and you just put your hand in and you grab and you start pulling. And you just keep pulling out that hole. If you make a smaller hole, it's a little harder to pull, but you'll have a little less to close up when you're done. You just keep pulling, pull a little, pull a little. You're gonna think this is ridiculous and it's not gonna work out. It feels like it's all twisted up. It feels like it's a huge mess, but keep pulling. And as the saying goes, trust the process. So now I'm down to pulling, reaching into the sleeve and pulling it out. And I'm gonna reach into the other sleeve hole and I'm gonna pull it out. And obviously I'm gonna have to pull these different corners out. So do that. And you have bagged the lining. So here is the jacket. Lining pulled to the inside and the fashion fabric pulled to the outside. Hope that makes sense. I know it's a little hard to see,